Hey everybody, welcome to Bill Sky, the Linux guy, and this is my third video in the series. And what we're going to do in this video is we're going to talk about the terminal environment, the command line environment, get you started on that. By no means are we done with that discussion, but we're going to get you started on it. And for those of you out there that say that the terminal is dead and everything is the GUI, you are wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Everybody talks about the demise of the terminal, of the command line. In fact, every time Microsoft talks about getting rid of the command line or getting rid of the PowerShell, people go crazy. And in fact, the command line is so popular, Microsoft came out with a new command line called the PowerShell. And that keeps getting updated all the time, at least a few times a year. So again, if you think that the terminal is gone, that's your problem. You are so wrong, and you're going to limit your job opportunities if you do that, if you think of that, if you don't learn it. And we're going to talk about the terminal, about the bash shell. I'm going to mention the corn shell. I'm going to mention all of these different shells in Linux. And it's so funny because I hear this all the time, and these people are wrong. I just kind of get the idea that they don't want to learn it. They don't want to learn something that might have been around for a long time. Why am I such a big terminal person? Because I started with the mainframe way back when we had time-sharing terminals, where we had big 3270 terminals, and that's how you spoke to the mainframe. That's how you spoke to the mini computer. You did it through the terminal, and that is not gone. It's not gone. In fact, during the eclipse in April of 2024, my wife and I traveled down to Arlington, Texas, to visit a friend who actually worked with me, worked on my team in development, and he now works for a bank, a financial institution. I don't want to mention which one, but he works for a financial institution, and it's amazing what he told me about people not understanding the terminal. And these people have jobs, and he is not a full-time employee. He's a contractor, and they're looking to him to educate their full-time employees on how to use the terminal, how to use the different shells, the born shell, born again shell, the corn shell. It is not gone, and you are really going to screw yourself. Oh, sorry. You're going to slip up if you don't learn these shells. So we're going to talk about that today. And every distribution of Linux, every single one, AIX, Unix, Linux, all of them come with some type of a shell, which is a non-GUI environment where you issue commands. And one of the main reasons for that is that the productivity is so much better on the terminal because you can create scripts to do things over and over again. They have a programming language of their own, loops, Python. You can even run scripts via Python. So with that said, what is a shell? A shell is a program that takes commands from the keyboard and gives them to the operating system to actually perform. And a lot of GUIs, like GNOME, they didn't rewrite the copy. When you drag and drop a file from one folder to the next, they didn't rewrite the copy. They simply have the operating system do it using the operating system command to copy. Same with delete. That's all, it's just all built in. The terminal is used all the time. Shells also can have their own scripting language, like bash scripts. We're going to be talking about that in another video. In fact, I could probably make that an entire series of how to do bash scripts. And then you've got this idea of a terminal. Well, a terminal is the way to interface with the shell. And the shell is the thing that issues the commands to the operating system, and the terminal is the way that you can get to it. So let's get right to it. You need to learn this. Let's do an introduction to terminal. Okay, so I've got Alma Linux up here and running right now, and I don't think there's very much installed on this. I could be wrong, but let's go ahead and let's go to activities, and I'm going to spring up a terminal. Now there's the terminal right there. There's also some shortcut methods. I think it was Control-Shift-T, things like that, but every distribution does it differently, and some of them may have that shortcut, some of them may not. I always like to do it this way. If I know the distribution has a command line or it has a keyboard shortcut, I'll use that. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on that terminal. And this is the terminal. Very unassuming, right? It just doesn't look like there's much going on there, and there really isn't. But it is the heart. It is going into the heart of the Linux operating system. So some of the shortcut keys to get to that, like for Ubuntu, it's Control-Alt-T. For Mint Linux, I believe it's also Control-Alt-T. For CentOS and Fedora, it's not actually set up. Let me go ahead. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to press Control-Alt-T and see if it comes up. And it didn't come up. So let's go ahead and create a shortcut on Alma Linux. So I'm going to go to Activities, and I'm going to type Settings. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to look for the keyboard. Where's the keyboard? There it is. And I'm going to, now I could do this, by the way, all with the terminal, but we're not quite there yet. So keyboard shortcuts, I'm going to click on Custom Shortcuts. And what do I want to create here? Well, there's a number of things here. I've actually never done this on Alma Linux. So let's type terminal. See, oh, there we go. Terminal, GNOME terminal. And this shows Shift-Control-T, so I'm going to double click on that. Now, I like it to be Control-Alt-T because it's the same as my other operating system. So I'm going to click this back. Get short. So I'm going to say Control-Alt-T, and you can see Control-Alt-T. And I'm going to close that window, and you can see a Control-Alt-T. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to close this. Now let's see what happens when I press Control-Alt-T. Boom, a terminal comes up. And it's very, very standard to do that. And the reason you do it is because the terminal is used so much. Okay, so let's do some of the basic commands. On the terminal right here, you can see that that's my logged in user, Linux user at localhost. We'll be talking about localhost later. But that simply means that I'm on the local computer. I'm actually logged into the physical computer. And then you've got this little tilde character. It's like a little wave that you would see in the ocean. That means I'm currently in my home directory. Now, what if I want to see where I am in the file system? Because the terminal is based on the file, it resides on the file system. I'm going to type pwd, and that tells me where I am. I'm inside of the Linux user folder, which is inside of the home folder, which comes off the root. The slash all by itself is the root. So if I want to go back to the root, I can see change directory, space, /, not backslash, /. And now if I type pwd, you see that I'm at the root. Well, what does all that mean? What does it mean that I'm at the root? Well, we're going to talk about file systems quite a bit in this discussion. So I'm going to type another command called ls, and that's a listing command, and it shows me the arguments, or not the arguments, I'm sorry, the directories that come off the root. And it might be kind of difficult for you to see because of the way that bash does the colors. And I'm wondering if I've never tried this in Alma Linux. Let's see if I can go in here. It says I'm in dark. It might be better for me to be in light, but let's go down here to profiles. There's really nothing in, oh, there it is, profiles. I can go into colors. I'm going to turn off use system colors. And now that's set up for this particular terminal. If I click on the plus, it gives me another tab, which lets me do things at the same time. Okay, so you can see all of those directories underneath the root. Now, we're going to talk about what each one of those are. But let's see if I can see. Oh, good. Alma Linux includes the tree command. Oh my God. So it's tree. So I'm going to say tree -L1. Now, what tree is tree is a command that says I want to see a kind of pseudo GUI of the file system that I'm currently on. And if I don't specify where in the file system, what directory I want to do a tree on, it just assumes the current directory. And right now you can see the current directory is the /. I'm at the very top of the very root. So you can see a bunch of things here. You can see the root itself. That is the top of the file system. Think of it like an upside down tree. The root is the top of the file system. Then let's go through some of these. You can see bin. Bin is where operating system programs are located. Executable programs are located. Now, some systems also have an sbin, which is right down here, and this one does too. The sbin folder, or the sbin directly, is really where kernel system files are located. And let me make sure about that because system binary files meant to be run by the root user. That's really what the sysbin folder is all about. Now, I really don't expect you to memorize all this stuff, but it's a good idea. I'll put all these in the notes. Home is where all the users are located. So all the user folders. etc is where all the operating system tool configuration files are located. Let me see. Media is where you'll see devices like USB thumb drives or whatever plugged in. You'll see it underneath that directory. Mount are where you're going to have other file systems, like let's say you want to mount a CD-ROM drive, or let's say you want to mount a remote file system. That might be where MNT is used. OPT, that's used to put optional applications. So I'll put Eclipse in there. I'll put other applications in there that I want everybody on my system to have access to, but they're optional programs. A root is the user ID home folder for the root user. And we're going to get into that when we talk about creating users and sudo super user do. Snap, that's a relatively new one. That's where snap files are located, where you install an application, which it's almost like an app image where it includes everything you need to run the application. And we'll talk more about that as things move on. User are user binary files, like programs and shared libraries are stored there. Normally the largest of the directories in Linux is underneath user. And var is also a folder which contains content. Like for instance, if you install the Apache web server, all of your web pages will be underneath var. And the reason it's called var is it means it's variably changing files that are modified constantly. So, and I'll put all of these into the description. Boot, that is where you can actually specify how the system should be booted. That is where the boot files are located. And I'm kind of interested in that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change directory to boot. Now I could say change directory starting at the root, boot, and then I can ls, and you can see all these files that are used to boot the system. There's also another one called grub2. Well, how do you know that's a directory? Well, I'm going to say -al, and oh, that's a mess. Let's make it a little bit wider here. Okay. So when you say ls space -al, that means show me all of the details of all of the files and directories. And over here, here's our grub2. That's the actual bootloader called grub. And way over here on the left is the letter D, and that means that it is a directory. And we're going to be talking about these other file access attributes later on. Some of the other things, who owns it? Well, the user root owns it, the group root owns it. It's 97 bytes in size. It was actually created on April 15th, or it was updated on April 15th, and the name is grub2. So we're going to be talking more about that type of thing in the file system. Also, you might see some interesting things here. Well, this little arrow right here means that this is a symbolic link. It's a link to another file located somewhere else. And that file is located in the lib folder. It's in the lib directory off of the root. So that's one thing that Linux and Unix really has the ability to do, is you can create one file in one part of your file system and link to it in other parts. So if those other parts require that file, you don't have to copy it. You just put a link in it, and it just links to the original file. So that's pretty much the basic file system. Now let's talk a little bit more about the tree command. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change directory to squiggly line, tilde, and I'm going to do a tree. And we can see right here, well, there's a lot more here than I was hoping, but we can see we've got desktop. This can get pretty involved. So I'm going to say tree one, and that means just go down one level in the directory tree. So you can see desktop, documents, downloads. I'm going to now change that to 2, and you can see it gets a little bit more because it's dug down. It's dug further down into documents. Let's see, what else can we do here? We can specify a directory. So let's say we want to just do it off of the root. I want to do a tree off of the root and go 2 levels down, and you can see how the tree starts showing the second level of directories. Let's say we only want to see directories. We don't want to see files. If you notice, there are some files located here. That's a file. It ends with .rpm. What I want to do is I want to only see directories. And you can see right now that we no longer have files showing. We only see directories. Let's say if we want to eliminate, we want to exclude a directory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want to only see directories, but I'm also going to -I. I don't want to see music. And you can see music is no longer in this directory tree listing. What else do we want to do? Let's say if I want to do two things. I want to exclude music and downloads. So I'm going to put a single quote, or downloads. And so now our display doesn't show music or downloads. Okay, so that's a real quick overview of the terminal. Now there's so many other things that we can do. We can run programs from here. One of my favorite programs is Genie. So I'm going to type Genie, and now my Genie editor has come up. So let's say if I don't want to go looking for it. I did that awfully fast, right? Let me go ahead and close this. Now let's go find Genie. So I'm going to do mouse clicks and keyboard type. So 1 mouse click, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, there's 7, 8. About 10 mouse clicks and keyboards. However, from the terminal, what do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Genie comes up. So it actually took me less time to do that on the terminal than it did looking for it on the GUI. Now, granted, I could put it in the dock. I could make things like, one thing I can do is I can go up to activities, look for Genie. I believe I can right click on that and add to favorites. And now Genie always shows up. So when I go to activities, there's my Genie. But one thing that you can't do that way that you can do with the terminal, ls, I'm going to list things. I'm going to change directory to documents. I want to edit install notes. Well, how do you do that from Genie? Well, I'm going to go to activities. I'm going to click on Genie. Okay, there's install notes because that was the last one. So let's go ahead and do that again to be fair. Activities, Genie, and Genie's empty, so I have to say File, Open, and I have to go find it. Okay, there it is, install notes.txt. What if I wanted to do a C project? Or what if I wanted to do something inside of it? Let's do the mount VM shared. Okay, that's a bash script that mounts shared folders in my VMware Linux. So there was a number of clicks there. I had to go find it. Well, if I'm in the terminal and I want to load Genie, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I'm not even going to do that. I'm just going to say Genie mount VM shared.sh, and boom, it came up. Now, one thing I want you to notice, though, is that the terminal is kind of dead. I can't really do anything here. If I Control C, it kills the program that I ran from the terminal. If I put an ampersand at the end, it loads Genie, and I can come back here and still do things. Now, any messages or anything that Genie might be displaying to the system, it'll show up here, so it can be a little bit confusing. But I can even start another Genie if I want. So there's even editors which are part of the terminal environment. One of them is called VI, and another one is Vim. So if I don't even want to load Genie, and by the way, to bring up that command again, I press the arrow up. I can press the arrow down to bring up the one after that. So it's kind of nice, and I'm just using my keyboard keys. I can also use Vim. This is a text editor. It is a lot like Edline, but much, much more sophisticated than EDline. Now, for those of you who don't know EDline, that was the only editor we had available to us in DOS 1.1. But anyway, so you can do a lot with the terminal regarding making things a little bit faster. I can even execute programs. Let me go and do this. So one thing that I like to do is I'll go here to the Files folder, or Files application. I'll go to Documents. I'll go, I don't know, let's create a C++ project. And now, to be fair, using the GUI in this case is a little bit quicker than using the command line. I'm going to rename this test CPP 64-bit. So here's another way to start the terminal. Now, you don't have to know everything I just did. What I did was I had a zip file, and I went ahead and expanded it into a folder. I renamed the folder, and now I'm inside the folder. Now, what if I want to do something here? What if I want to actually build this program? Well, another way to bring up the terminal is, as long as you have files opened, you can right-click on the background and say Open in Terminal, and it changes directory to that terminal location. And PWD again tells you where you are in the file system. I'm in the test CPP 64-bit folder, which is inside the CPP projects folder, which is inside of documents, which is inside of my Linux home folder, which is inside of the home folder off of the root. And I can just type make, let's say make clean, make, I'm going to run the program, and there it says welcome to C++, program ending, have a nice day. So look how fast I did that. If I had to do it in Visual Studio Code, let's say, or even Eclipse, I could not have done it that quickly. Let's say if I want to change the program, look how fast that changed. I got that change in. Unbelievably efficient. So that's an introduction to using the terminal, and we're going to be using it quite a bit in this course. Okay, you got your first taste of the Linux terminal. I mentioned other kind of terminals out there, Corn shell terminals, SH terminals, Bash terminal. We've been using the Bash terminal, or I should say the Bash shell, quite a bit. Yeah, I'm going to be mixing up terminal and shell here and there because it is kind of nebulous, the difference between the two, arguably nebulous. But you need to get used to using it because the next thing we're going to do, the next video we're going to do is how to update your Linux operating system and how to install new applications. And we're going to do that primarily in the terminal. I'm going to show you how to do it also in the GUI, but we're going to do it primarily in the terminal, and I hope to see you at that next video.